I just graduated from nurses training and I graduated in 44 in October, and in January the 5th, I was already in the service.
I, in combat, was the division photographic officer in the 25th Infantry Division.
My name is Lee Alfreds. I served in the United States Marine Corps. My military occupational specialty was 0311, which is a rifleman. I served in the bush in combat in Vietnam.
I was in the U.S. Army. I was a specialist, Tech 5 specialist, same thing as an E5 would have been sergeant.
My name is Dean Collins, and I spent 24 years in the military, in the Army, Medical Service Corps, so it was mainly in the medical field. But I crossed other boundaries with the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines at times. Spent a year in combat in Vietnam with a combat unit, the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, where I was a medical platoon leader, and that has quite an impact on you.
I was in the Air Force and flew in around Germany and England and the European theater. My age is 91.
I'm Fusine. I serve in the Army National Guard. I was stationed in Fort Hood, Texas when I was active duty for 3 years, and while I was active, I was deployed to Iraq in Fort Ruster Mine, located north of Baghdad.
Chuck Quigley, United States Army Infantry, the Korean War 51 to 52.
What I think I remember most about the military from the good standpoint was a sense of duty, honor, and accomplishments.
It's just that the position alone of being locked up in the Army with a whole bunch of other men, everybody doing everything at the same time, makes you realize that you're not better than anybody else.
You were closer to people than you'll ever be, in the rest of your life. You depended on them. They depended on you.
One of the things I noticed was that, life was short. A lot of things we take for granted and stuff like that. And there's just, I came to realize how more important my life was. So I just decided to take more advantages of it.
It taught me a lot of discipline. It taught me, what you have to have, what you have to be, also to be a soldier.
I think what got to me most of all getting in there is what I thought was useless things that we had to do for training and marching and all that, and I thought, what's this got to do with nursing? They had a reason for all of the things that we did, like, you probably don't know what a Jacob's ladder is, but they have a rope ladder that they drop over the side of the ship, and we had to climb down that to practice abandoned ship in the Pacific Ocean. I mean, we had to take a carbine apart, and then we had to go take target practice, and I would say to myself, I'd be I'd be terrible with a gun, but give me a scalpel and I could do more damage. Some things I thought were absurd but I could see later on, I could see the reasoning behind it. They needed discipline, and that's how they got it.
The preparation for the moment that would bring the Army nurse to your side began months before back home in the United States. After 3 years of professional schooling, the nurses were given 4 weeks of basic training. In those early days, perhaps the nurse wondered why she had to sit through seemingly endless classes and submit to rigid discipline. Often, while muscles ached and groaned, she may have wondered why it was necessary to take those long hikes or grope her way through a gassed area. Yet there were demands that would require of her perfect physical health and stamina, the strength to stand up under the rigors of combat nursing. 4 weeks of basic training finished, the Army nurse was ready to serve wherever the Army needed her most.
It was a tragic thing to go through a country where after the enemy has been there and driven out, you realize what horrors they left behind. Children without parents, parents without children, all kinds of real horrible stuff. Food is in short supply. The army and the armed forces were actually helping feed these people. And that's a dreadful thing to say.
The Vietnam War, of course, was very different than any other war. The problem was the country was against the war. The press had done a very good job of alienating the people. The country was an angry country. I enlisted in 1968. The country I left, even though it was kind of in turmoil, 1968 was the year of the assassination of Martin Luther King, was the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, and things were not going well. When I returned in 1970, it was even worse. The riots in Chicago at the Republican Convention, the Democratic Convention, were all part of the persona of the people. When I was released from the Marine Corps in 1970, I was told that within 24 hours I needed to get my uniform off.
I think I was 24 years old, and the pain and suffering will last you a lifetime. So that impacted me is when I came back to the States, and or as we call it, the world, and tried to assimilate back into a normal society. It changes your thinking, and you become very mature very quickly.
You know, I've been asked by a lot of people to tell a lot about it. There isn't much you can tell. I went through some bad times. We lost a lot of people. A lot of them were some of my good friends that I saw go down. Couldn't do anything about it. They just spun out and hit the ground, blew up.
At the end of the single air attack, the United States had suffered a crushing blow, and the nation was at war.
The Jap squadrons returned to their carriers with a loss of only 49 planes, a cheap price for so great a victory. Although America had paid heavily for being unprepared, the U.S. Air Force, led by men like Hap Arnold, began to rise from the disaster.
But when we returned home, because of the unwelcome attitude, many of my comrades were spit on, were called baby killers, we were called all kinds of names because of the press, what they had acclimated the country to. I spent 5 months in the bush in Vietnam, and I can tell you I did not see the atrocity. I did not see one single incidence of babies being killed, civilians. It was war. Obviously, civilians die in war. They died in every war. But it was an angry time.
What I had learned from my experience in the Army, that the best thing to do was pick it up and move on. Because if you're in a combat situation in the Army and you get shot at, you gotta pick up and move on. That's the only choice you have.
Let me put it this way. At that time, you appreciated what America was when you got home. Man, if you heard griping and that, they'd say, what's the matter with you? Take a look around you, see what you're looking at. You know, I really appreciated what America had. I don't think I'd ever be dissatisfied.
All in all, it was something that I'm proud I did, and glad I did it, and wouldn't trade that experience for a lifetime. I think it's has a lot to do with the people we are today, whether it be good or bad. It's an experience and has a impact on how you deal with life today.